The following commentary is directed at the unconscious black masses, but is available to all in an effort to ignite a discussion that brings positive change. For although they do not represent all black people, the comatose have a very loud and unfortunately memorable presence across all media platforms, and for many have become the face of the black experience. What is happening, beautiful black people? Why aren't you rising above and adding on to the strong and admirable cultures from which you descend? Why aren't you building on to what the previous generations were doing? Why is the false black culture being passed on? And by false, I mean that which was manufactured for you by your enemy, who told you that you were ugly and unintelligent and that you come from wild savages that didn't have a language or religion, instead of the true culture. Why, instead of going for a healthy and progressive cultural diet, do so many of us gorge ourselves on sweet, sweet trash, leaving our people in a state of stagnation and even of backwards momentum? What's happening, Nubians, is that history is repeating itself in a very bizarre way. As we all know, for centuries, it was very difficult and in some cases impossible for our ancestors that were enslaved, molested, and abused in accordance with the rules in both the Quran and the Bible and with the blessings of those gods. It was impossible for them to pass their original cultures on to the next generations due to the conditions under which they lived. And humanity is a chain. Each generation creates, maintains, or modifies what the previous generations have established. That's how progress happens. Well, the comatose black masses are not maintaining the previous culture. They're not improving it, not adding on. They're creating, and look at what they're creating. Of course, the first cultural separation was involuntary. And I'm not only speaking about black people in the West. All people of color have had our cultural, spiritual, and psychological development undermined and defiled by the whites and their gods. But despite all of that, people of color everywhere managed to either continue their traditions in some form, often alongside what had been thrust upon them, or in the case of Western black people, to forge new cultures that were a synthesis of various West and Central African cultures, as well as some European ideas and practices. Some of the European influences have been very useful. Western medicine, for example. But too many of us have also imbibed the Europeans' belief about racial supremacy and this racial pecking order that they have crafted to keep all people of color fighting and hating one another while they rob us all and wipe us all out, while the oppressor's corporations steal millions of liters of water every year from the Mexicans and Indians, got them dying of thirst, while Asian children are being worked to death under cruel conditions to feed the non-stop cheap-ass junk goods train, and while they're dumping their trash and toxic waste off in Africa, while they're making billions off of black and brown folks in the American prison complex. But it's useful for us to hate one another. That's why they keep it up. It has worked to their advantage for centuries, and people of color are the most avid disseminators of the prejudices and cultural fails that fuel the whole white supremacist machine. This is why we care about your behavior and who your heroes are, because it's not just about your disgusting modes of dress, walking around looking like you dropped a slimy load in your pants but are too low IQ to change yourself. It's not about your ridiculous wig that some poor family overseas was paid to shave off a corpse and that came over here in a box crawling with lice. It's about the fact that you are a willing cog in the machine of white supremacy that affects us all. Now, black people have a plethora of examples, both living and in history, on how to be strong, successful, and dignified. But you don't want that. You crave the sweet, sweet taste of trash and trashiness. This time around, it's the black masses that are rejecting the culture, that are rejecting the intelligence, creativity, and discipline that it took to create things like jazz, rock, and hip hop. You reject the values that created the HBCUs, that inspired Dr. Patricia Bath to pioneer LASIK's eye surgery, that created caller ID, as much as black people can't live without it because I don't even answer 800 numbers unless the name of the company shows up. As much as we love the crisp, clear sound of the foil microphone invented by an African-American man, and that is in use in the device you're watching this on right now, as well as in hearing aids and baby monitors, you don't want to embrace the culture that invented the home security system with live monitoring, which of course was invented by an African-American woman. You're on these computers and cell phones calling your people niggers and motherfuckers, never even realizing that the first IBM personal computer was co-invented by Mark Dean. And this is what I mean about passing on. Look at what the rest of the world did. They took what that black man established and built all of this on his blueprint. All this technology. They added on and benefited from it. You could do the same thing with your own culture, but that trash sure is sweet. It's delicious to see your own family and your own people living in slums, fighting over crumbs and filling up the prisons and cemeteries. It's thug life. It's cute. Don't your friends and family look cute on those memorial t-shirts? Now, we could blame the lack of cultural transmission on the fact that many of you weren't raised in the same culture as the previous generations. Black culture has changed since the 60s and 1980s. You didn't grow up with Malcolm and the Nation of Islam. You didn't grow up listening to Stevie Wonder speaking out about apartheid, and you didn't watch Bill Cosby's documentaries about black history. You didn't listen to James Brown. None of your parents ever protested for civil rights. Black parents today shove a tablet in the child's hand or hand them the remote. They turn the children loose on the internet and let the devil shape their minds. But we can't stop with that explanation because we all have the internet, the greatest research tool humanity has ever known. There's nothing stopping you from clicking on videos about healthy exercise and diet instead of simply letting your oppressor slop you at the trough when you didn't have an unhealthy diet at all before you met him. You didn't have diabetes and gout, 3 backs and 2 booties. There's nothing stopping you from clicking on websites and videos that explore character building, philosophy, and a spirituality that doesn't justify slavery, child abuse, or incest. And there's more to education than the computer. You ever heard of books? How many of you read this year? When is the last time you've gone for a walk in nature and learned something? Black people love hollering about how we invented jazz and rock and roll. What instrument do you play? You buy your children video games. You buy them GTA where they get to choke a hoe. When was their last music lesson? Would Pookie be in juvenile hall if he'd been at home practicing the keyboard? Do you even know the basic elements of jazz and rock? Because your oppressor does. So we can't stop with saying that we weren't raised in a progressive black culture because you weren't raised with a lot of the habits and ideas that you picked up online. Yet these habits and ideas have become central to your worldview and have blocked the path to achieving your goals. And the reason for this, the reason that trash tastes so sweet to you is that your oppressor has convinced you that you and everything about black people is worthless. That's why you can laugh, sing, and dance along to so-called music with lyrics about killing your own people. But you will never see your enemy dancing to music that says kill their kind. Why would they? When they can blast music about killing niggas all day, sing along and smile in our faces. You have swallowed the lies about the value of self and kind and believe that your culture has no value. You invented the blues and just abandoned it. You invented jazz and abandoned it. You created rock and roll and made millionaire legends out of your oppressors. Unconscious black people are constantly building a market for other races and then just handing it over. Black people invented breakdancing. Who's breakdancing now? Who's cashing in on it? The Germans. They know how to do it better than you. They're the ones that lobbied for breakdancing to become an Olympic sport. Your oppressor knows the value of his culture. Want to learn how to waltz? $100 an hour. Want a tango? $80 a lesson. But all your enemy has to say is, I wish I knew how to do that dance. And you cornbread shuffling magpies will jump up, take off your coat and show them for free. Taking them under your wing, teaching them to rap. Producing them and putting them on so they can make millions calling you a nigger. And providing lavish lifestyles for their family, buying them the finest lice shampoo for generations. They've trained you. You're a Labrador retriever. Go out and invent it, make it hot, and bring it back to massa. And maybe he'll give you one of the bones with a bit of meat left on it. But when a person thinks that what they're doing is cute, it's difficult to reach them. Your refusal to level up mentally and spiritually has left your mind in a childlike state. You're constantly playing. Everything is a game, and nobody is out here playing but you. Look around you right now. Take a look at your life today. What's the score, nigga? I'm Taharka X.